Exercise 4 in chapter 3 is a really good exercise because it's different in that it's going to require us to figure out how to solve error correction. And that's what accountants often do. Often we're reviewing somebody else's work because we're the supervisor or we might be the auditor, and we have to recognize when mistakes have been made or something's not correct. And then we also have to problem solve, well, how would we correct that? So this is a good one in that it demonstrates and forces us to figure that out a lot. So here we have, on exercise 4, we have a trial balance with our accounts listed, debits and credits. There's going to be times when I ask you to actually pause the video and stop and look and think about what you would do. So this is a good time for that. I want you to just look at the accounts, look at the balances, look at the numbers, and see if you can recognize just off the cuff things that aren't right. So let's pause for now. Okay, we're back in. I hope that you recognize that the totals don't equal. So that's something that's not right off the cuff. Debits and credits need to equal, and they don't. So that's awry, and that's weird, right? The other thing you might have recognized, cash is an asset. Well, assets have debit balances. So that amount should have been a debit instead of a credit. So let's move it over. Likewise, unearned service revenue, that is a liability. Liabilities have credit balances, so we would need to fix it that way as well. Okay, so we found 3 errors just by eyeballing it, just looking at it. By the way, if I went ahead and added my debits and added my credits, they're still not in balance. So let's go to the additional information and see if we can find more mistakes. In the narrative in your textbook, I've just typed it up here for us so we can all work on it together. And by the way, I would recommend that why don't you do number 1, see if you can figure it out on your own, and then come back to the recording and see how I would work it. And because you'll learn more that way because you can be thinking about it instead of just listening to me. So if you will, go ahead and pause and then come back. In number 1, we can see that we've got, the debit and credit amounts are the same, so that's good. The problem is that the correct amount is the $750. So the company made an error of $180. They needed to have recorded $750 instead of $570. This is a transposition error. There's a rule in accounting called the rule of 9. And when the error is divisible by 9, usually then that error is a transposition error, meaning, it's got the same digits. Notice 570 and 750, they're all the same digits, they just transposed it. So again, if the error is off by a number that's divisible by 9, that's the rule of 9, then usually that indicates a transposition error, and the accountant can start looking very closely to see if numbers have just been turned around. Well, in this particular case, they didn't record enough. So we need to record additional amount of cash. We also need to record an additional amount decreasing accounts receivable, right, by $180. If we made a journal entry, that would be the journal entry. Cash would go up, accounts receivable would go down. All right, let's go back to our trial balance and let's record these adjustments here. So we're saying we would add $180 to cash and we would subtract $180, the effect would subtract $180 from accounts receivable. Okay, let's go to number 2. And if you will, go ahead and pause, read number 2, and see if you can figure it out. Okay, in number 2, again, they've got a debit and a credit for $500, and that's accurate. The problem is the debit shouldn't have gone to supplies. The debit should have gone to some equipment account for a computer printer. And we can take a peek back at the trial balance, look to see. They don't really have a computer printer account. The one that fits really is equipment. So, back over here, we need to put $500 in the equipment account. I'm just going to abbreviate it. And then we need to take out of supplies $500. And this is just, a classification. Whoever did this just misclassified the asset. Instead of supplies, it should have gone into equipment. Okay, well, let's go back over here. And we just said we're going to take $500 out of supplies and put it in equipment. So we'll record that, the effect of that adjustment right there. Okay, number 3, if you will, stop the recording and look to see if you can figure out what's going on. Well, in number 3, we have another transposition. We have, the debit was recorded for $890, but they left off the 0 when they went to record service revenue. Obviously, their debits and credits didn't work. Any good, or actually just any decent accounting system, electronic accounting system, would have caught this. I mean, a manual system wouldn't, but if this was done electronically, which normally it is anymore, a decent accounting system wouldn't have let you put in $890 for a debit and only $89 for the credit. It would have, asked for more entries. So, it's unusual that this would happen, but let's just go with it. It did happen. So, let's see. We're off by $701, right? So the journal entry, not 701, 801. See if I can turn that 7 into an 8. We're off by $801. Notice again, it's a transposition. 801 is divisible by 9. And so we need to increase revenue by $801. And it's a one-sided, there's really not a journal entry because the original entry wasn't in balance. So we need to, make an additional increase to revenue of 801. So there's really not a double entry here. I went the wrong way. All right, so let's go back here. Let's go down to service revenue, and it needs to be increased $801. Okay. All right, let's go on to number 4. See if you can figure it out. Well, in number 4, we have a debit and a debit. Can't have two debits. And again, a decent electronic accounting system wouldn't allow this to have happened to begin with. But if it was manually, there's no controls in that to prevent that from happening. So anyhow, we have a problem here. The debit to office expense is accurate, but instead of a debit to cash, that should have been a credit to cash. So we have cash going up $65, right? When in essence, we should have had a decrease to cash. I made a mistake. I need to erase that real quick. There should have been a decrease to cash. So we've got cash with a debit 65, and it should have been a decrease of 65. So to go from a positive to a negative, we've got to subtract 130. All right, so to make our correcting entry. So we really need to decrease cash $130 on this. Okay, let's go back to our trial balance, and we are going to insert here a negative 130 for cash. All right, let's go over to number 5. And if you will stop and read it real quick. Okay, so let's take a look back. Unearned service revenue, they're telling us some of that has been earned. It just hasn't been recorded yet. So in this particular case, we need to take dollars out of unearned revenue, $325, and put it into service revenue. So we could have a actual debit credit correcting entry here. Okay, so we're going to reduce unearned revenue by $325 and increase service revenue by $325. All right, and we'll go back over here and do that. So subtract $325 and go to service revenue and add $325. Okay, let's go to number 6. Again, if you'll take a look, pause, and then come back. Number 6 is pretty easy because it's just telling you they omitted, a debit to salaries and wages expense of $670. So we need to, increase salary and wage expense $670. So let's go post that. Our trial balance, so this needs to go up 670. Number 7, you will pause for a moment, see if you can figure it out, and come back. Okay, and number 7, this one's pretty complicated. First off, we have 2 errors. The first error is that they have 2 credits, a credit to cash and a credit to accounts payable. And so there's a payment on account and the credited cash and credited accounts payable. So one of the corrections would be, we need to debit accounts payable should have been debited. And so we need to back out that $260. So we need to debit accounts payable to reduce it. And so they credited accounts payable $260, so we want to take it out of there. So they had increased accounts payable $260, and we want to back that out. The other error, well, actually, is that the correct dollar amount is $206. And again, that's a transposition error, right? We're off by $54. That's divisible by 9, so it's been transposed. But since they didn't record it as, correctly, we're going to have really 2 things we're going to do. So we need to decrease accounts payable $260, and then we could turn around and record the correct amount of $206. So I'm going to make it in 2 entries instead of just netting that all together. So I'm going to decrease accounts payable $260 and increase it, excuse me, I said that wrong, didn't I? I'm sorry. We don't want to increase accounts payable. That was their error to begin with. So we had the correction of, backing out this original entry, backing it out, and now let's correctly record the payment as reducing accounts payable $206. Sorry about that. So we're going to have 2 reductions to accounts payable. We could add that together. We've got a total reduction of accounts payable for $66. Okay, so let's go to accounts payable and subtract our $466. So right there. Okay. Last one, number 8. So if you will pause and come back. Okay, if you're back in, there was a dividend, and for some reason they debited salary and wage expense instead of the dividend account. So we need to correct that. The dividend account should have been the debit, and then we want to correct and take that out of salaries and wage expense. So we want to remove it out of salary and wage expense. So take it out of expense, put it in the dividend account. Okay, so we're going to increase dividend, decrease salary and wage expense. Okay, and I'm actually going to add an account, dividends, to my trial balance here. So if I add that there, and we're going to add $575 to that, and then salary and wage expense, we will subtract $575. Let me double check real quick. Okay, so if we take these, let's end up with our adjusted amounts. So, looking at our adjusted amounts, so 2870 plus 180 minus 130, we'll get 2,920. You know what? Let me move that over. Oops, took out more than I meant. Okay, so adjusted. Okay, so again, we'll have a debit of 2,920. 3231 minus 180 is 3,051. Next one's going to be 300. Then we'll have 4,300. Then we move to the credits. Accounts payable minus that is 2,200. Then we have 875. Common stock will be 6,000. Retained earnings stays at 3,000. Revenue will be 3,506. And then go over to our wages expense as debit, 3,495. 940 for office expense, and then dividends, the 575. And then if we add those up, 15,581 for both sides. Double rule it, meaning it's in balance, and we're all done.